بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولكن الله حبب إليكم الإيمان وزين في قلوبكم وقر عليكم الكفر والفسوق والعصيان أولئك هم الراشدون فضلا من الله ونعمة والله عليم حكيم. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال سيدنا مولانا محمد كل غير السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. All praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all praises for one who has been granted the title of the most great, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And praise is those who have inherited Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I can't say I don't consider myself a specialist in this field at all. I don't consider myself even a teacher. I sit here as a teacher, as a scholar, and rather I'm only echoing what our teachers have for us, and those who have inherited from us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is, in our particular case, is a privilege of learning from such masters as in the Shaykh Ahmad, who today is a living contemporary, rugby, and especially the highest caliber in skills, all the way ready to just drawing water from heaven and doing whatever we can. Now, the topic of today's discussion is one of the most central and most important topics we will cover. And if we think about what drives human beings, there are many different types of ambitions that drive human beings. Some are the lower ambitions, carnal desires. Motivated by food, you do whatever you can to get the next best. If you're motivated by designed by these are motivations. But if you examine that further, we want these things for a reason. We don't want them in and themselves. So other motivations can be like the motivation for approval, that you want to be approved, you want to be liked, you want to be accepted. And that's another form of motivation. If we examine it further, another form of motivation is to be in control, to have authority. That's another form of approval, although sometimes it's done by force. So people who want to be in control, always right, always in authority, that's also another motivator. That's why people run for office. That's why some people run for power. Another form of approval, so another form of driver is that you get to a point where maybe the greatest thing that drives you is to have a purpose in life, to have a motivation, to have meaning in life. And that, for some people, is also a driver. But they mentioned the greatest driver, the greatest that trumps all of these, the greatest motivating force, the greatest purpose is love. That really, if you examine every person, that everybody loves something. Everybody loves something. The question is, we all love different things. For some of us, we might love, like we said, food. That's become the highest love, that's the highest objective. For some of us, we might love ourselves. And so we are the highest priority thing in our lives, and therefore anything that clashes with it, we trump everything. That's the greatest motivating force. For some of us, the greatest love is your job. And for that means that you're willing to sacrifice anything for that job because it's the thing that you love the most. For some of it,
For some of us, the greatest love that we have is our parents. And so therefore they take the highest priority in our life. So everybody has something that they love. Everybody has something that they love. And that love is the most powerful force because it gives you focus. There's a book written by Daniel Goleman, and it's the book called Emotional Intelligence. And it was formed in the 1980s. And Daniel Goleman, he opens up the chapter and he talks about how love or emotions, and of those, the most powerful being love, how it's so powerful that it can overdrive your instincts, like to survive, to eat, to drink. So he gives an actual real case study. He says once there was a family, a mother and a father, and their disabled child, who was, I think, they were in a wheelchair, so they were not able to walk. And one day, when they were on a train, the train derailed from a bridge, and it fell into the water. So it was a very terrible accident. People passed away. And what both parents did was they could either keep afloat themselves or their daughter, who was disabled, would have drowned. So what they did was, in order to keep their daughter afloat, they had to hold her up, and that meant that they drowned. That meant that they drowned, and so they actually did this. The girl survived, and they passed away. So Daniel Goleman explains that they had to overcome their own instinct to survive. And the only thing that enabled them to do that was that they had love for their daughter. So you see, love is such a powerful thing that not only does it give you focus and drive, but to some degree also, if you look at it from the other side, whatever it is that you love the most, that thing has control over you. That thing has control over you. So that means loving the wrong things can be quite dangerous. Because what you're really doing is it's like you're giving the remote control of your life to that thing. That will dictate what you should sacrifice. That will dictate what's centered in your life. What everything revolves around. But equally, the flip side is very interesting. Loving the right thing can also mean it's a very powerful driving force. It means that you can focus. It means that you can be motivated. It means that you can trump anything else that clashes with that thing. Anything that's evil, anything that goes against that, you can overcome it. So, see, when we talk about love, this you can love anything, but in the deen, in Allah's religion, the first thing that the Prophet ﷺ taught, the first thing, before prayer, before zakah, before fasting, before having a bed, before any of these things that we have taught from, first thing, what was the first thing that the Prophet taught? La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this statement is a declaration of love. La ilaha, that there is nothing, there's no person, there's no being, there's no objective, there's no purpose in life, there's nobody who shares in that relationship. Nothing comes equal. La ilaha except Allah, meaning that there's none worthy of loving except Allah. That means it doesn't mean you can't have an attachment to somebody. Yeah, that's fine. But this is the highest attachment. Nothing is equal to it, and this dominates everything else. La ilaha illallah and Muhammadur Rasulullah. Muhammad is how to achieve it. So both what to obtain, how to achieve it was mentioned in the statement. So the whole religion, we say this, when you enter the religion, someone converts, or we know this, that this is one of the 5 pillars, the declaration of faith. But actually, maybe we never looked at it from this dimension that it first means that if you want to establish that love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it means you first need to disconnect from everything else. It doesn't mean disconnect in the sense that I can't have an attachment, I can't love anybody. No. It means that you cannot love anybody or love anything equal to the love of Allah. That has to be the most dominant. That's what it means. So La ilaha illallah and then Muhammadur Rasulullah. So when we talk about love, we first have to understand what are the signs of love. So it's like if we talk about being wealthy, someone will ask, Okay, how do I know I'm wealthy? Well, you have lots of money, you have lots of money in your bank. Some might say, well, actually, that's not wealthy. Wealthy is having lots of assets. It doesn't mean you have to have cash. You can own lots of property. So the same case in love, love has a sign. So there are many different words in Arabic for love. One of them is hub, which comes from the word hab, which is hab means seed. So this hub is referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or muhabba is love, but it's a hidden love, meaning that it's not expressed. It's not expressed open, but it's hidden. Just like a seed is hidden, it's underground. You can't tell it's there. Another word that is used, which is one of the qualities of Allah, and notice um, hub or hab or hub, none of the 99 names have hub in it. What we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through is wudud. And wudud comes from the word that is expressive love. It's a love that is evident. How? Because Allah expresses the love through blessings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses the love through care, through rafiq, through gentleness, through reward, through comfort. These are expressive terms, meaning it's not like, oh, I love you and I'm not going to show it. No, Allah's expressive love. And then there's a third word, which is often used when we talk about love, which is ishq. Ishq. And ishq, even in the Urdu language, ishq understanding of what it means to be in love with something. So what are the signs of love? It's actually mentioned in these things. So the first, let's work backwards. The first is ishq. Ishq, what the mind plant is teaching us, is that one of the signs of love is when you love something, you become covered in that thing. How do we apply this? I love a football team. So I become covered in my football team's jersey. I become covered in maybe my favorite footballer's hairstyle. I become covered in my favorite footballer's lifestyle. Why? Because that's showing that there's a love that's developed. That naturally someone follows something, somebody that they're attached to. So that's ishq. Ishq, that you become colored or covered in the thing that you love. Okay. So in relation to Allah, what does that mean? To be colored in Allah. That means if you love Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is color. What does that mean? It means his qualities, his sifat. That becomes the most dominant in you. And to have those in you, that's why you need the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ is a reflection of Allah's sifat in creation. So that's how to develop with Allah. But that's the second we said was muwadda. Muwadda is what? It's an expressive love. So this is another thing that whatever it is that you love, you also, one of the signs of that love, the fruit of that love, is that others benefit from that love. That others benefit from that love. So it's like a tree. A tree, one of the signs of a successful tree is that it bears fruit. It bears shade. So it brings benefit to everything around it, its environment. And so if you love something, from that love, it should express itself. How it should express itself in forms of fruit. The fruit is in helping others, in good deeds, in a healthy relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it has an expression to it. It doesn't just sit there and say, oh yeah, I love you, but I'm not doing it if you ask me to. No, it expresses itself. And then finally, hub, this is more of a subtle matter, and this is to do with those hidden aspects of love. And so this only really comes in when you have ishq and mawadda. That hub is a subtle matter, and that's when a person, like they say that you only really know the sacrifices parents go through, and the love of a parent when you become a parent yourself, because there are many things that the parents do that you will never even realize, even in your adult age. There are many hidden sacrifices that they make that they don't mention to you. Sleepless nights, working multiple jobs, difficulty. In some cases, even parents have gone for abuse, raising their children, but they never mention. So we see this in the prophets as well. The prophets also made many hidden sacrifices. Like it's mentioned when the Prophet ﷺ traveled in the heaven, the Mi'raj, and he met Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The scholars have commentated and said, well, this was also an act of love of the Prophet ﷺ because he could have, had he requested, he could have stayed there with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and there was no need for him to return. But the fact that he returns, and after he returns, then you have the hijrah, where the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Makkah to Medina. And then thereafter, you have many of the battles that ensued. Many of the battles, famous battles ensued. And many of the sacrifices that happened of the hijrah. So things got more difficult. And at no point is mentioned in the seerah that the Prophet ﷺ never mentioned, do you know I gave this up for you? Do you know I gave this up for you, my companion? Or when things got difficult, let me remind you what I gave up. No, the Prophet didn't mention it. So this is like one of the higher forms of love, but only this is established once the first two are. So these three things are signs. So there's something to take away there that actually muhabba, this is reflected in a person when he doesn't remind the people in which he's benefiting, or he doesn't remind the person who he loves that, look, this is what I've done for you. This is what I've done for you. Because reminding the person, then it's a bit of insincerity in it. So the question is, these are the signs of love. Now, if I ask you, you want to purchase, the latest night trainers or Gucci bag, you might say, okay, I need to know what the signs of a legitimate Nike trainer is or a legitimate Gucci bag is. Look at what the legitimate signs. Then you look at a retailer and you look to buy it. Then, in order to get that thing, you need to exchange money. So for everything that you want, there's a currency. That's no different to love. Love has a currency. So we've described some of its signs. Now what we're interested in is what do you need to do to purchase love? And more particularly the love of Allah. So, like we said, everything has a currency. The currency for love is sacrifice. Now you might be thinking, well, why is it sacrifice? Well, actually, on a day-to-day basis, we sacrifice. When you go to the shop and you buy, you give your money and you get an item, it's sacrifice. You sacrifice money and income and the time that you spend that money in exchange for something. So really sacrifice, all it is an exchange. We think that when somebody says sacrifice, oh, lose the count. Well, no, you're not. You're exchanging something. Whether apparent or not apparent, there's an exchange. Whether it's to do with this world or the next, there's an exchange. But it appears that you've lost something. It's like saying you paid for your goods and you start getting sad because you paid for it. No, that's what was required to get what you want. So sacrifice is the currency of love. And it's actually the currency of anything. You want to love anything, you'll realize it you're sacrificing for it more. Yes? So the key question is now is, okay, if the currency is sacrifice, then what are the mechanisms, what are the things by which I can sacrifice and obtain an attachment and love of something, and also detach myself from anything as well? Because it works both ways. You can either love something or you can divest, meaning uninvest from something. And that also means that you detach yourself from something. Right? You just do the opposite process. If you do A, B, and C to get to love something, then C, B, and A makes you unlove it. Right? You just do the reverse. So the Mashayikh have mentioned 7 ways, 7 means to develop love of anything or uninstall love of anything. How many? 7. Okay? So we're going to be going through each of these. 7 means to develop love of something. So the first means is what you use your eyes with, what you use your eyes for. So let's apply this. If you use your eyes to watch, to use that, let's say I want to develop love, or I want to, let's say the person who develops love of money, he didn't grow up and was born with love of money. He had to do something to develop that love. So what we find is he was either using his eyes and watching things related to money. He was watching shows related to money. He was reading about money. He was reading about making wealth, creating wealth. And if that's the only thing that he's feeding himself, then that becomes a channel to develop an attachment. Equally, if you want to develop love of Allah, you can also use the eyes to develop love of Allah. How? There's a reason why we are taught to go to the sacred places, because these are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things like the Kaaba, things like Bayt al-Muqaddis, Jerusalem, things like Medina al-Munawwara. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, Inna fi khalqi as-samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafi al-layli wan nahar, that to look at the alternation of the day and night. In the Quran, it talks about looking at the natural world. Why? Because that's also a way of developing love of Allah. Because you look at it with the eye of connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how you use your eyes to look at the people, look at the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is also the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, look at the face of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. This is worship. Look at the face of Sayyidina Ali. Why? Because we know that just like faces have blessings, time also has blessings, like the 100 times, or the time before. Places have blessing, time has blessing, people have blessing. These are the three things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts blessing in. And one of those, among them, actually, the highest people, time and places are only blessed because people are there. Makkah is only blessed, and the Prophet, the first Prophet, also established the Kaaba. That's why it's blessed. Otherwise, Makkah at one point had idols in it. It wasn't blessed then, was it? It was blessed because of the blessing of Allah. Similarly, Medina is blessed only because of the Prophet. Jerusalem is blessed. Why? Because one of the historians documented that there are many prophets that are buried in Jerusalem, and it's signified in the Mi'raj. When the Prophet ﷺ travels, where do all the prophets congregate? In Jerusalem. He leads them in prayer. And that's because physically as well, many prophets are buried there. So many, many wisdoms behind this, but look at the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a way a person can have an attachment to Allah, because we can't see Allah, obviously. So therefore, we go through. Okay. So the first was what? We said your eyes, how you use your eyes. So the second means of love, how to develop love of anything, is what you listen to. So that person who is attached to himself, or attached to, or loves himself more than anything, or loves money more than anything, or loves clothing more than anything, more than anything, they will have to be feeding themselves with their ears, meaning that they're listening to that constantly. They might listen to podcasts, videos, listen to talks, like gatherings, whatever it is, they're feeding that part of themselves, and that also helps form attachment. And again, this could also be applied to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? The kalam of Allah, listen to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, listen to speech, listen to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, listen about the signs of Allah, anything associated with Allah, the Prophet, the deen, this develops an attachment to that. So it's very straightforward so far. So the first is what we said. Okay. Second was ears become a means to develop love. Okay. The third thing is tongue, what you speak about. What you speak about is more of a signal of what you're most attached to. If you speak about money all the time, then that strong indication that is what you're most attached to. And equally, the people of Allah speak about Allah most, because that is what they're attached to. That is what occupies their mind. That is what occupies their heart. And so things like the dhikr, things like recitation, things like speaking to one another, which is like reminder, nasiha, dawah. This is why by doing that, this brings an attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is actually the principle of dhikr. Dhikr is, it's an affirmation. Reciting something again and again, one develops an attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, we've got three. So tongue, we said. What was the second one? Ears. The third? Eyes. Okay, yeah, I swapped them around. Okay, it was the first was eyes and the third was tongue. Was chest. All right. The third is, the fourth is what you think about. What's on your mind? What occupies your thoughts? If that thing, if it's money, then you're going to be thinking about it all the time. If it's yourself, you're only going to be thinking about yourself all the time. But if it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's why it's mentioned the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are in the presence. That's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ihsan is to worship Allah as though you see them and know that if you do not see them, Allah sees you. So that these people of excellence, these people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are people who are always have this thought that Allah is watching them, Allah is hearing them, Allah is with them. Why? Because that's also a means by which that occupies their thoughts. It's in the background. There's an awareness that's developed. So that's the fourth channel, what you think about. The fifth and the sixth, I'll couple them together. The fifth and the sixth are what you spend your money on and what you spend your time on. If you're spending your money on a bad habit, then no wonder why you can't get rid of it, because you're still investing in it. If you're spending time around the bad habit or things that encourage you to do bad, then no wonder why you're going to be attached to it. Why? Because every day you're investing in it. So you need to start to divest. Similarly, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who give time to Allah, then they get the love of Allah. That's what they get in return, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, those who spend in Allah's way, Allah promises that you will get higher return, guaranteed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, some of us have more belief in throwing seeds and plants growing than in the concept of giving in the way of Allah. We're happy to throw seeds in the ground and water them and check on them in a couple of months and it's crop. But actually, Allah guarantees you that when you spend it in the way, you always get more back. You always get more back. That's the formula. You do it for them, your wealth, your risk, your wealth increases. So this is the, we mentioned the fifth and sixth. We said how many so far? We said the tongue, what you speak about. Sorry, the eyes, what you look at. The ears, what you listen to. The tongue, what you speak about. The mind, how you think, what you think about the most. The time, what you spend your time on. And sixthly, what you spend your money on. All six of these are channels. And depending on how you use these, you can either invest in developing a relationship with Allah, and you can use these principles to uninvest from any attachment that you would attach to. So you have a bad habit. If you have a bad habit, examine how am I using these six things to develop that bad habit. And you'll realize that it's one or two or three or some of these that actually you're highly consumed in. It might be a Netflix, it might be, I don't know, an unhealthy habit. It might be you know, you have an unhealthy addiction for unhealthy food. It might be whatever it is. You can pinpoint it and be your own doctor and actually see which one of these am I actually using. And equally, you might think, well, actually, I want to develop a stronger connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to, you can look at these 6 organs and say, okay, am I using these in a way that brings me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Am I using these in a way that brings me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Firstly, if I'm using them in a way that doesn't bring me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what La ilaha illallah is teaching us. La means uninvest first before you invest. You can't be friends with you can't be friends with somebody and then be best. That's what La ilaha illallah is saying, that you can't have your foot in both camps. You can't have your foot in camp in shaitan and also your camp one foot with Allah. That doesn't work that way. Loyalty means that you also are loyal through and through. So first you uninvest. The second is, how can you, and these things happen in parallel, by the way. It's not like I can't do any good deeds until I've rid of all bad habits. No, you focus on removing yourself from these bad things, but you also replace them with something good, right? They say the best way of replacing a habit is substitution. If you go cold turkey, you're going to want to do something. If you're watching something bad, watch something good. No, it doesn't mean that you don't watch anything. If you're around bad company, then try good company. It doesn't say be alone, does it? So these 6 channels are channels or uninstall any type of attachment that you want. And really, it's for us as Muslims, as believers, it's been made very clear that La ilaha illallah, that there's no other highest attachment we should have is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this attachment, if you think about it, it's the safest and most best attachment to have. And that's what Allah is explaining to us, that any other attachment, anything that you love, will take something from you. You love your spouse, there's something that they want from you, whether it's time, beauty, uh, reassurance, stability. There's some exchange going on. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the only relationship where it's one way. Allah doesn't benefit from anything that you do, and you are the only beneficiary in that relationship. That you worship because you need that worship, because it's from the Spirit. You do good deeds. Why? Because you benefit from those deeds. Why? Because you're a better person. You benefit in the dunya and the akhirah. So we don't do things because, oh, somehow Allah. No, you benefit. You're the benefit. So it's the only relationship that doesn't take from you and only gives. And it's also loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees you from being enslaved to everything else. Because we established at the beginning, anything that you love also has control over you. So imagine the stress that person's life, the person that gives his love, to something that's going to use and abuse you. Or you love everything else except Allah. That's like, as Ibn Abil al-Iskandari, one of the great saints of the past, one of the great scholars. He says, would you rather have 100 masters, slave masters, or would you rather have one slave master? Because 100 slave masters, that's everything in your life. Your employer wants to enslave you, the company wants to enslave you, your in-laws might want to enslave you, your parents want to enslave you, your kids want to enslave you. Why? Because they all want something. But once you make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the ultimate objective, it frees you from them. Why? Because if you live your life trying to please everybody, you're going to live a depressed life. That's basically what it's saying. But if you live your life trying to please Allah, then Allah will please you. That's how it works. People don't have the capacity to please you. Even if they've done them millions of favors, maybe they can only remember a couple. And even then, they'll forget all of them as soon as you do something, a mistake. They'll forget all of the favors. That's the nature of people. How many people have, I don't know, made a mistake with their friends or their spouse, I don't know, left the socks on the floor, and the honeymoon, the years of good marriage has gone out the window. Like you've never done something good in your life. So this is the nature of people. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the opposite. That you can live your entire life distant away from Allah. But that one moment that you decide, you know what, I want to have a sincere relationship with Allah, it's as if you have been Allah's favorite from the day you were born. And we know this from the stories of the Prophet ﷺ about the man who killed 99 people. He killed 99 people and he makes it 100. But because he has that sincere turning back to Allah, Allah makes him a person of paradise. So it doesn't matter about your past. It doesn't matter what you've done with Allah. The relationship with Allah is very unique. That's also what La ilaha illallah is saying, that there is no relationship like this. There's nobody that you'll meet who is able to forgive you. There's nobody you'll meet that will be able to overlook your faults fully. There's nobody that you'll meet who will be able to appreciate everything you do for them. Except Allah. So the love of Allah purification. The course of purification. Purification simply looks at these 6 aspects. We said what you spend your money and your time on, what you listen to, what you speak about, and it looks at these faculties, what you think about, and it says, in order to develop a relationship with Allah, first we need to purify. Purify means you remove something. It means you remove something of negative, you remove a quality, you remove a bad quality. So purification starts with removing any action or thing that you're doing from these 6 or 7 things that causes you to disconnect from Allah. So before talking about connection, first remove anything that disconnects you. So the example is, it's like if I say I want to plant a tree, I first have to find fertile land. I have to de-weed that land. I have to make sure that land is not arid, meaning that the land is not dry, it's wet, it's moist, it's ready to take a seed, ready to. And that's like purification. You have to first make sure the ground is ready. You have to remove those things. If you planted the seed, it wouldn't grow because these things would take away from nutrition, or it won't allow it to grow. So purification first, stripping of anything that disconnects you from Allah. And those things that disconnect you from Allah is basically anything, any quality, any action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't. For example, Allah isn't a liar. So become your habitual liar, that disconnects you from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't cheat. So if someone who cheats people, whether it's financially, relationship, then that disconnects you from Allah. So the first process is to remove anything that disconnects you. And then the second part is then you can put the bells and whistles, right? Then you can start to nurture something more. That by removing what's stopping you connecting with Allah, then you can adorn yourself with all of the other qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And actually those come naturally. Once you stop lying, that automatically makes you truthful. So by removing something, you've already developed something, truthfulness. By never cheating, it makes you prosperous. So actually removing something is actually also giving you something. So this is to summarize what we said. The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, love is the most powerful driving force. That's the first thing. The second thing we said is love has signs. Those signs are what? The first was that you're covered in whatever it is that you love. Comes from the word. The second is that love brings benefit to others and benefit to yourself, like mawadda, which is expressive love. The third is that love, to make it sincere, it's between you and the lover. It's not for you to go around and say, oh, I love this person. No, it's between you and the object of love. It's not something that you have to remind. And then finally, we said if you want to develop love of anything or uninstall an attachment between you and anything, then it happens through 6 means. What are the 6 means? The first was what you look at, how you use your eyes. What was the second? What you listen to through your ears. Okay, that's the third. What you speak about, what you use your tongue. Okay. Fourth was what you think about. Whatever occupies your thoughts, you develop an attachment towards. The fifth is money, and the sixth was time. Time. So what we've learned here is these are the channels of attachment. And what we teach at the center, what we teach in these gatherings, and what we teach on an ongoing basis is this course of purification. Because once you embark on this course of purification, you're taught how to empower yourself. Because what we've just discussed here is that, look, if you have anything that you want to remove the attachment from, you have an addiction, then you know how to do it. It's through these 6 channels. Equally, if you want to develop a loving or more loving attachment for something, you know how to use it, coming through these 6 channels. So now it's about getting on with it. And this course of purification is taught, and it's a self-development program where you are given a mentor. And just like you might say, oh, I want to develop an attachment towards something, he or she will look at your life and say, okay, these aspects of yourself, they'll do an audit, and you'll self-audit yourself and work out where is it that I have issues and where is it that I need to develop. So this is a free of charge program. It's something that you do yourself. And it's only when you embark on this process, that's when you start to develop that attachment and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'll leave you with this last story. It's a story from the book of the Israelites. It's a story that's mentioned in the books before the Quran, but it's been mentioned through in Hadith as well, on the rates, which is it's the story of when, in the time of Isa alayhi salam, he passes through a village and he meets a man. This man asks Isa alayhi salam, "Oh Isa, you are Ruh Allah, you've been given this honorific title that the spirit of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the meaning, this is a title that Isa alayhi salam was given. And can you make dua for me?" And he says, "What do you want?" He says, "Can you make dua? I have the love of Allah." He says, "I want the love of Allah." And Isa says, "Are you sure?" He says, "Yes, yes, yes, yes." So he goes, he makes the dua for him, he leaves. Isa alayhi salam then he returns back through this village and he asks the village, because he remembers this man. He says, "Oh, where is this man?" And he was pestering me. "Where has he gone?" And the people said, "Oh, he's gone mad." Said, "What do you mean he's gone mad?" He says, "He lives on this mountain. We never see him." Islam alayhi salam, that's strange. He goes up onto this mountain and he sees this man. This man is staring up, completely encapsulated, staring. He says, "Okay." He calls that man. He calls him. The man has no reaction, doesn't respond. He says, "This is strange." So Isa then starts to raise his voice and says, "Oh man, the messenger of Allah is here and he's calling you." Meaning that that's him emphasizing now, respond. The man doesn't respond. Then Jibreel alayhi salam descends and says, "Oh, Isa bin Maryam alayhi salam, even if you were to cut him in 1,000 pieces, he still would not respond." And Isa alayhi salam says, "Jibreel, why? What has happened?" Jibreel says, "This is what the love of Allah does to you. That he has been given such a love of Allah that he is just as if Allah is the only thing that exists. So nothing waver him, nothing will even come between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." And so this is what I was mentioning at the beginning, that love is such a powerful force that it gives you, it's like a laser pen. And if you're able to focus it in the right place, then everything else follows. You know, maybe you don't pray 5 times a day, fine. but by developing an attachment that naturally follows. Maybe you don't have the Islamic lifestyle, fine, but by the love of Allah, embarking on this process, these things are fruit, but they're not the source. It's not the roots. The roots is always love. And that's where we're going wrong. We think that by looking Muslim, that we become Muslim, but that's not the case. It's you have to start developing an attachment. That's what the first 10 years of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ was. There's no prayer, there's no zakat. It was just establishing the foundation, the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to be those who love Allah sincerely and those who Allah loves sincerely. Makes us of those who Allah loves and favors. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us close and in the company of those who love to love us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us His love and the love of those who He loves and the love of those deeds which most brings about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. And we ask Allah to make this love in us greater than the love of ourselves, the love of our families, and the love of water. Subhanallah wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. I believe we have only 5 minutes for questions. And inshallah, we'll be following up with Dhikr, which we'll be doing before. Questions related to the topic or not related to the topic, that's fine. You're welcome to ask. Is there any questions online? Inshallah, if there's no questions. Oh, there's a question. Sorry.
How do you ascertain if something overall brings you closer to Allah? There are aspects of it that bring you closer, but
Right. Okay. The sisters asked a very good question. How is it, if I have to summarize it correctly, how is it that you determine something brings you closer to Allah? Okay. So it's been made very simple for us. So anything that brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is firstly, it's been explicit by the commands of Allah. So where Allah says, don't do something, you don't do it. But Allah says, do something, you do it. So that's the first thing. It follows the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second, if it follows the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the quickest and closest way of getting to Allah after the obligatory. Okay. The third is obviously no harm comes in the sense of unlawful harm comes to anybody, because the whole deen can be summarized by this actually, that no harm comes from you to anybody and only goodness comes to you from everyone in all aspects. That's the summary of the deen. So if there's something that you're doing that has a mixture, it depends on the nature of that thing, but provided it's halal, then that's the first thing. It's not okay. Then it's a matter of the sunnah and the sunnah of Prophet. There are certain emphatic practices and certain non-emphatic practices where there's more leniency in. So it's been made very clear that there's no where there may be lack of clarity is how you apply this to a situation. For example, let's say you have to go to, one is I have to go to work, and let's say it's mixed environment. Okay, it's a mixed environment. There's men and women. Free mixing, scholars mentioned different positions on it, but generally you shouldn't be free mixing with al-ihram. However, the obligation of work is the higher obligation. And so therefore, if it's part of your work, then obviously then it's a different matter. Whereas if you're doing it socially, then it's a different matter. So these obviously is matter of faith, you know, how to apply it. But in terms of how do you know, it's made very clear that actually anything that Sharia and anything that's in the Sunnah, that's anything that helps you close. Does that make sense? Yes, otherwise.
There's a question online from our it goes up and down, and sometimes you can feel regret for not feeling the love of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu as strongly all the time. What level should we reach that's good day to day, or is there a path to keep repeating?
Repeat the question.
What level of love should we reach that's good for day to day, or is there a path to keep repeating?
So the brothers asked that our iman goes up and down, and how do we develop a love that is? So I mentioned already that there's a process of purification. It's a very simple example. Imagine your deeds are just like earning money. You earn money every day. Okay, that money is a currency in which you establish connection, a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what would you say to the person who earns all his money and then spends it wastefully at the end of the day? So that the next day you're starting with zero. Back to being poor. What would you say about that person? You'd say it's a bit, there's no savings, there's nothing. You're just living for the day. Every day is up and then you go back down to zero. Why? Because you spent it frivolously. So this example is akin to somebody who does lots of good deeds, but he or she does something that invokes the displeasure of Allah. And that bankrupts you. That bankrupts you. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, quality like ujub, which is pride, it burns good deeds like fire burns. Interesting, it talked about burning good deeds, meaning that the effect of these things it removes, divorces you. So the intelligent person will focus on how do I retain, how do I preserve whatever I've got in a day. He doesn't focus on becoming a millionaire in one night. He or she invests every day and she preserves that. So that's like this room. This room is like your heart. The heart is what has attachment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just like this room, you can heat it in two ways. You can get a massive fire, but leave all the windows open. What will happen? It'll heat, but that heat will escape. Or you can be intelligent and say, I'll close all the windows, and even if I put a little bit of heating on, at least it will stay. And that's what purification is teaching you to do. It first gets you to shut the windows, shut the doors. Those doors and windows are the channels of those are the channels which are connecting you to those things that bring about the displeasure of Allah. Meaning, those are the things that detach you from Allah. We mentioned your eyes, your ears, your organs. So these are channels to develop a connection with, and you can develop a connection with evil things, like whatever, nafs. So you have to be able to tackle these first. It's only after you're able to tackle these, then even if you do a little bit of good deeds, you then begin to experience the benefits in your iman. Your iman begins to build. That's what it means to build. We unfortunately have become so used to the idea that iman goes up and down like this. That's not normal. And that's not normal in anything. Your health doesn't go up and down in extremes, does it? It shouldn't be. You know, your wealth shouldn't be going up and down. Like you should have a reserve bank for savings, right? That keeps you afloat. So the same case with iman, it should be building. And if it's not building, you're either building for it to go up or it's somewhere it's escaping. So the course of purification teaches you very systematically how to develop this. So, inshallah, that should be an answer for this question. We've got one more question. Sure, I'll answer it. I'll answer it.
You mentioned 7 things.
Yeah.
How you do something. In many cases, particularly where love stems from sort of narcissistic traits or self-love, there will be cross-cutting, intersecting across all of those seven areas. How do you manage reacting or tackling seven things concurrently? Is there sort of a process which you should tackle first?
MashaAllah.
Sort of impact on that.
MashaAllah, excellent question. So, about those moms asked, let's say you've got narcissistic, whatever actually the attachment is, whether it's narcissistic or yourself or something, you have an attachment towards something. How do I go about managing it? I can't do all seven. Or it's very difficult to do all seven. And so that's why the Prophet ﷺ, the prophetic methodology is that you don't do all seven. You identify one thing and you manage that one, even if you're engaging in the other aspects. So once a companion came to the Prophet ﷺ, this is an extreme example. He said, "Ya Rasulullah, I fornicate, I drink alcohol, and I lie. How do I get rid of this?" And the Prophet ﷺ said, didn't say don't fornicate and don't drink alcohol. Not that they were affirming that, but the methodology of removing that was intelligent, is prophetic intelligence. He ﷺ said, just don't lie. Okay. He goes, he practices this, and what he realizes that eventually he's going to have to go and see the Prophet ﷺ at some point. And when the Prophet ﷺ sees him, the Prophet's going to ask what he's been doing. And if he can't lie, he can't cover his sin. He can't say, "Oh, I've been drinking," or "I've been fornicating." So what ends up happening over time, he ends up letting go of these sins just from not lying, because the lie was the cover for everything else. So the Mashayikh, they are masters on the science of change. So what they would do, a mentor would do, they would sit down and say, okay, let's say you have, let's say an addiction towards something, it could be drugs, alcohol, pornography, whatever. You will examine yourself that, okay, if it's an extreme addiction, then there's something I'm doing that's feeding these 7 channels. So they will ask you to focus on one, and then maybe with certain things you can put barriers in. That's where the mentoring really helps, because to do it yourself, it can be a very difficult task. It's like trying to be your own surgeon. Wouldn't recommend it. 0%. You hire somebody, and on the outside he'll be able to see, okay, focus on one thing, and then you build that. Does that make sense? So it's done in cumulative or in sequence. It's not done all at once. The idea that we try to do everything all at once. We go Umrah, we come back, go to bed, we're in hijab, go, like we say, full Aki mode, and then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, you see the person back, even worse. It doesn't work. Same change happens. Does that make sense? Obviously, the more specifics can be discussed, and if it's something specific, then it can be discussed privately. Okay, inshallah, I'll hand over. I will be doing dhikr in the next few minutes. I'll hand over now to Sheikh Muhammad.
each person to do their individual dhikr, that is not called a gathering. Nor is it for people to do their own dhikr out loud, where each person drowns out the other person's voice. That is abath. That is mess. In the Sharia, there is no mess. And so the gathering for dhikr is that it is done in unison, as the companions radiallahu anhu did, as the tabi'een did, as Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he did himself. In the hadith reported by his son, Abdullah ibn Umar, that Umar radiallahu anhu in Arafah, he would do takbir وَيُكَبِّرُ النَّاسُ بِتَكْبِيرِهِ, and the people would do takbir in unison with his takbir. And so the hadith of the angels who roam the earth and the pathways and the streets searching for gatherings of dhikr, when they find them, they call unto one another and say, come, for we have found what we have been looking for. And what they are looking for are those who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those who remember Jannah and remember the hellfire. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the end of this somewhat lengthy hadith, says, bear witness, my angels, that I have forgiven them, and I have given them what they seek, meaning paradise, and I protect them and grant them refuge from what they seek refuge from, which is the hellfire. And so the angels will say, oh Allah, and Allah knows best. Among them is a person who, with them is a person who was not from them. He was brought against his will. Sometimes your friend says, come on, no, I don't want to come. I want to come. Okay, it's a bit awkward, it's a bit weird, I don't know these people, something like that, yes? Or even somebody just passes by. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, I have forgiven all of them. They are the people whom none, at least none who is near them or sits with them can ever be upset, miserable, or sad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gladdens all those who are at such gatherings. And so these ijtima'at, these gatherings and assemblies to the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, specifically mentioned in the hadith, are unlike the gatherings where people sit alone. And Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, he says that the gathering for dhikr and the raising of the voice in unison has the same impact on the heart like adhan does on the listeners. And so the more mu'adhins there are who call the adhan, then the more likely the people will come to salah, because they can hear the impact of the voice of many adhans. We've been to Muslim countries, not Mecca and Medina, there's one adhan, but if you've been to Cairo, if you've been to Morocco, if you've been to any Muslim country, you hear tens, hundreds of adhans going on. Even non-Muslims go and their hearts start to flutter. Yes? And so Imam al-Ghazali, he says that impact is greater than one mu'adhin. Similarly, those who gather for dhikr and the voices are raised and do so in unison, that has a greater impact on the heart and a greater motivation for that heart to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so in this day and age, this practice unfortunately has been boxed out or no longer exists within the mainstream. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who revive this sunnah, a sunnah which the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam loved and testified when he came and saw the companion Muawiyah reported that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed by a gathering of dhikr. And he asked the companions, what has gathered you? What has assembled you? And they said, we gather to remember Allah. So the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, I don't ask you as a form of accusation. I'm not accusing you of doing anything, but rather Jibreel has come to tell me that the angel boasts about you right now. And in another narration, Allah boasts his angels because of what you are doing. So imagine that Allah is proud of us and boasts the angels of what is being done, remembering and glorifying His name out loud. So this dhikr is a loud dhikr, it is a group dhikr done in unison, just some basic etiquettes that we follow the lead, Brother Abdullah in this case, and that we don't raise our voice above his voice, but we continue. If he lowers his voice and he helps maybe to take a breath or a sip of water, that we continue with him, we continue the dhikr that is being said, yes, and that we don't go ahead of him either, inshallah. And then I'll pass over to Brother Abdullah who will remind us, inshallah.
Only off focus, so don't get scared. Just to keep ourselves focused and not distracted by. That's the only reason why the lights are off. So the three keys which I say, this is just to maintain connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that to remind ourselves throughout the dhikr and anything, to be honest, that Allah is with me, Allah is watching me, and Maghrib upon us. So finish within 10 minutes, inshallah. Apologies for the delay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا You're not here to listen to me. You're supposed to engage the dhikr, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. من الذي عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا ما شاء. وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يئوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. مولاي صل وسلم
دائما أبدا على حبيبك خلق كله على حبيبك خلق كله محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين وبالعجيب مولاي صل وسلم دائما على حبيبك خلق كلهم هو الحبيب الذي ترجى شفاعته من وتحميم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيب الخلق كلهم على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم فاعلم أنه لا إله محمد رسول الله فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله إلا الله إلا الله إلا الله إلا الله لا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه وهو الغفور الودود ذو العرش ذو الجلال والإكرام ذو الجلال والإكرام ذو الجلال والإكرام اللهم صل على سيدنا ومحمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم. سبحانك الله وبحمدك أنا أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. We will conclude with dua after the Maghrib Salah, inshallah. Um, uh, after Maghrib and after Fajr, uh, it's prophetic practice to recite some Masnoon Adhkar. It's referred to as a Masnoon Adhkar. Those who are not familiar will share the PDF. It's a long, lengthy PDF, but for some short Adhkar you could do is you should know uh, Durud Ibrahim, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Barik Allah, that 10 times. Um, so Fatiha, Ayatul Kursi, and this because if you're not familiar, so inshallah, we'll turn one of the lights on. Inshallah. We need the mic up front.
أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. القارعة ما القارعة وما أدراك ما القارعة يوم يكون الناس كالفراش المبثوث وتكون الجبال كالعهن المنفوش فأما من ثقلت موازينه فهو في عيشة راضية وأما من خفت موازينه فأمه هاوية وما أدراك ما هي نار حامية. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله. اللهم لا ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك.